Ray the CPA here. How you doing? All right, so we're going to do another series here. So we've got our series on business advisory. We've got our series on nonprofits. We've got whatever I want to do, but this one is going to be about audits, okay? So in general, so the preview of coming attractions, what I'll talk about in this video is just a general introduction to audits. Coming up, we'll talk about different things that auditors hone in on and different tests that I've found a lot of people have trouble with. Meaning, the auditor's there, he's asking you questions, or he or she are asking you questions. They're just a pain, okay? And it's very difficult. So let's start with the basics of audits. So there's many different types of audits, okay? There are internal audits. Your organization may or may not have an internal audit department. External audits for a variety of reasons. IRS tax audits, there are audits of internal control, there are compliance audits, there are IT audits, there are operational and performance audits, there are payroll audits, there are retirement system audits. In a nutshell, what is an audit? Somebody from either in or outside of your organization wants to understand and test something, okay? So what does that mean? For example, travel at your company. There's travel expenditures, there's travel policies. What would an auditor want to do if they wanted to do a test of travel? They might come up to you and they might say, hey, can I see receipts for all of these, everything inside this trip? You're thinking to yourself, well, why the hell do you want to look at it? What they want to see usually is they want to make sure that what you're doing is within policies, at least within the IRS policy. On travel, you're reimbursing the right rates, you are using the appropriate documentation for appropriate activities. A lot of times it's a test of reasonableness, a test of appropriateness, or they want to substantiate a balance somewhere. So what do I mean substantiate a balance? They want to make sure that if you've got $50, there's a reason why you have $50 there as an expense. It's always a measure of why. Why did you record this transaction? Why did you do that action? It's a question of whys. An audit shouldn't intimidate you. Typically when auditors come, it's a pain in your ass. Why? Because you've already got your regular job to do what you're behind in. And here comes an auditor. Hey, can I ask you a question? And it's a pain because you already got stuff to do. Understand, if you look at audits as a partnership, as a way to have somebody with an expert set of eyes, an extra set of expert eyes on whatever you're doing, your audit will go a lot smoother. Also, if you always think to yourself, how would I document what and why and with whom and when every single time? If you think along those lines, the audits will start to go easier. Always, 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 if you have receipts, store receipts. If you have a reasonable reason for doing something, meaning it's a logical thing that you have to do or you feel you've had to do for your organization, it's usually based on something. It's either based on a policy, a procedure, a something. Have all of that together and store it somewhere where you can grab it. And then that way you don't have to rely on your memory, and that way when somebody asks you a question, it's easy, you got it. What you don't want to do is not document what you're doing. You don't want to have that box of receipts. If I come to audit you and you have just a box of receipts, a lot of auditors, especially if they're an external auditor, they will tear through that. And they'll tear through that because they're going to increase your fees. You weren't ready. If it's a IRS audit, if it's a compliance audit, a lot of times those auditors won't care. So let's wrap up. There are several different types of audits, and there are several different types of auditors, Okay. Now, in the beginning of the video, we spoke about the different types. There's internal audit. They're inside of your organization. They're auditing for compliance, performance, the works, typically. There are external audits. That means that either somebody sent them, right? So for example, if you are a not-for-profit and you're receiving grant funds, sometimes they'll send an auditor to audit how you spent those grant funds, right? If you have received federal grant money, they'll send out A133 auditors who are going to test your compliance and whether or not you are in within the standards and how you spent the money. They're going to test the documentation of how you spent the expenses, and they're going to test to see if you're in compliance with A133 circular. That's a standard that the government has for federal grant monies. You may have an auditor from the bank who wants to test. Let's say you have a loan or a line of credit, so you may have an auditor from the bank. The bank will say, go test their accounts receivable. And again, that's something where they're going to want to test out that what you say you have is reasonable based on the supporting documentation you have for your accounts receivable, let's say. Or you may have an IRS auditor, or you may have not quite an audit, but you might have somebody doing a review or a compilation. That's when they're putting your financial statements together. And it may feel like an audit because they have a lot of questions and things like that. So let's stop there. That's an introduction. That's just to wet your whistle. What we're going to do in the subsequent videos to this is we're going to talk about things. In a payroll audit, what kind of things would a payroll auditor look for and what you can do to prepare for that? Or an external auditor who's doing an audit of your financial statements, what kind of things will they be looking for? There'll be multiple videos on this, so enjoy those. Subscribe, comment, interact. If you have further questions, there's a large percentage of us that are going to be audited, whether we're a small business, a medium business, a big business. A lot of established companies have a hard time with audit because they don't have any auditors on staff that can really break down the why. If you know why somebody's looking at something, you can figure out how to get them the documentation, and it will inform the rest of your activity for your organization. Okay, so Ray the CPA out. As always, bang bang, and have a great one. All right, thank you.